my name's Brandt I'm the director of Breathing Deeply Yoga Therapy, and I am here with Fiona, and she is going to talk to us and me about the subject of yoga therapy, and menopause. This is like probably a really fantastic subject to talk about. As I was thinking about this right before we were doing it, I was like, wow, this really does affect a lot of people. Like, close to half the population on the planet. So the fact that this might be a newer subject, like how yoga therapy can help people with menopause, is kind of sad
Yeah,
because it's so prevalent.
although I think that's kind of reflective of where it's just been as a subject in general. I don't think that yoga therapy has been late to that party, I think.
No, it's just that you don't
Yeah.
have massive amounts of research going into this. I was just looking at a more recent article on PubMed about how there's an explosion of menopause research, uh,
Right.
which almost makes you laugh, right? Because you're like, well, a little late to the party. It's not like menopause is new. So,
Right. Yeah. It's
we're both yoga therapists. We both worked with people with various menopause symptoms. Um, I guess maybe, I don't know if you want to do it or me, but like a little background on like who is getting this menopause. Um,
who
would
is
you
getting
like to do that?
oh yeah, so people with uteruses generally, women, um, average age I think of menopause is 52, but actually that varies wildly because there is up to 10 years of perimenopause, which is actually the period leading up to menopause, which is officially one day where you have been 12 months without a menstrual period. Um, so I guess middle-aged women basically are the cohort that we're talking about, but can be a lot earlier than that. Can be very very premature as well. So there's a widespread of people that this affects, and there's also a massively widespread of symptoms. Some people breeze through it. Some people have a much more turbulent time and loads of really difficult symptoms. And there's a million different approaches too to how to deal with that, of course.
Yeah, and I am a couple of things to mention. One is that, like you said, because of the perimenopause period, you could be talking a very large chunk of someone's life being affected by these things. So it's important. And the other thing, there was a survey conducted. 20% of women have said in the survey, how accurate it is, but that they've taken time off of work because of menopause
Mhm.
symptoms.
Yeah.
And 40 of people who have had one disruptive menopausal symptom, 43%, um, they're 43% more likely to have left their jobs by age 55, which is very early, right? So this is like really affecting people's ability to like make
Hugely.
money and live their life normally.
Absolutely. That's on an individual level. And then on a kind of, economy level, I believe the New York Times article that came out last year quoted that it costs the US economy $1.8 billion a year in
Yeah.
lost hours, because of menopausal symptoms. So
And
this is,
because it's my podcast, I'm just going to say that's probably low.
no idea.
Right? Like it's probably low because it's really hard to quantify the toll of people being less productive. For instance, like a high product, really high producing worker person being at
Yeah.
80% or 70% of their abilities. That's not never good. So yeah, really important. All right. So let's talk a little bit about like what you've been working on. So I know this is like an area of interest in yours. How'd you get so interested in this subject?
Well, I mean, I came to it from a personal point of view. I came to it because I was struggling and I've had a regular yoga practice for years, but suddenly I found that the things that I had been doing for years that had always kept me grounded and helped me were not working anymore. And so, I happened fortuitously to be in the middle of my yoga therapy certification process and was learning lots of different approaches. Thankfully, was learning lots of different approaches because of that. And as part of that, one of the requirements was that I ran a group, a therapeutic group. And so I decided to make it something that would benefit me as well as other people. And so I started a group it was a very small group of women who came to me, who I'd spoken to personally, who I knew was struggling. And I suggested that maybe we'll get together and see whether this was something that could help. So that's how it began. And now it's evolved into really working more one-on-one with people, because actually what I found is that because it's such a disparate and individual experience, yoga therapy can be really helpful in really targeting specific symptoms or specific kind of states of mind or whatever somebody's going through.
Right. So let's real briefly. So I know you did this group and you did this group for how long?
Well, it
Like
was supposed to only be for 5 weeks. So we were supposed to do 1 week of kind of, get together and work out what we wanted to actually work, what symptoms people were having or what people actually want to address. And then it was supposed to be 4 weeks of actual yoga therapy and yoga practices. And it ended up being 11 weeks because people just wanted to carry on because they found it so helpful.
right.
And then eventually we started working one-on-one together.
Right. And obviously it worked well. Just for everyone listening, because I know everyone has the same question on their mind. It's like, well, did it work? And how did it work? So yoga therapy helped with, basically. How did
Yeah, so I mean, it was, it's not a magic wand, like anything. It's not, it wasn't the kind. I wish that I could say to you that I cured everyone's hot flashes, which seemed to be one of the primary issues that people came with. But actually, while it wasn't the magic wand, it did have a really profound effect in many other ways. So people were suffering from things like insomnia. It really had a beneficial effect for those kinds of symptoms. So I think there were different aspects to it. There was the in the moment stuff you can do to manage your symptoms right now, which the kind of hacks, I like to call them, yoga therapy hacks for perimenopause. I had a set of things that we could do right here, right now. And then there was also a bigger, and I think I've had to zoom out from this. I've had to have a bit of time away from it, like from it beginning, to realize that there was a bigger benefit, which was it became a real opportunity for insight and personal growth surrounding the whole subject. Learning to accept what you can control and not control is a real yoga skill.
yeah.
And then on a very practical level, in a time of life where lots of women are struggling with role overload and feeling very overwhelmed, not just because of menopause, but just because of wider life as well, a regular yoga practice is really helpful in helping women create some space for themselves, right? Some quiet time, some kind of time to just reflect and feel where they are at a point where I think lots of women have, get to the point where they feel very disconnected from their body because it's not behaving like it used to. So it's a chance for women to actually do that. So I'd say it's kind of multi-layered. The benefits, there's lots of different benefits, from physical and mental health benefits right the way through to these bigger kind of benefits as well.
You know what I find myself doing right now? I
Mm-hmm.
find myself translating this to, like, what if this were men? I can't help but do it just because I happen to be a man. No, and it's really interesting because if you think about it, if we tease out like the different kinds of symptoms, so you have, people having trouble sleeping, people are having temperature regulation issues, people are having kind of what you call mental health issues, like maybe more anxiety, maybe people are having more fatigue, right? It could be any of these things, and there's more symptoms. And like you're saying, they're having their bodies changing. So, you're sort of like working with that mentally, like I'm getting older, things don't look the same, things don't function the same. Um, and I guess what I was saying is, like, sometimes I think these things are put into like a strange box because it's women. So it's almost like maybe it's beneficial to think about it as, okay, a guy walks into your office, says, I don't know what's happening to me. I'm like sweating all the time. I'm looking in the mirror and I feel like my skin's falling off. And my sexual function is poor or confusing because it's not the same to me, and I can't sleep. And the doctor's gonna be like, my gosh, you know, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to tackle these problems because this is 100% not okay. So I do think there's been that sort of gender gap where people are like, oh, you're a woman, so these things happen to you. But I'm gonna say, I just want to add this because I think it's good thinking about it for everyone that these kinds of things do happen to men, right? In a totally different way. And people take them seriously, right?
Right.
people take them very seriously when men say, I can't sleep and, I can no longer have sex and I feel tired all the time. Someone's going to be like, okay, well, we clearly have to investigate
Yeah.
this,
Well, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole that we could go down, but there really is an incredible lack of accessible, affordable, informed medical care surrounding this
Yeah.
right now. I'm saying that from personal experience too, but I do know, I mingle amongst women of my age too. I know I'm not the only one who's finding this. You can pay a lot of money and find some brilliant care, but finding something that's covered by insurance in the US is really very difficult. And I believe that, this is a recent statistic, but I believe, there's this big hoo-ha surrounding the whole HRT or menopause hormone treatment, as it's now known. And yet only, in fact, between 4 and 6% of women in this country are actually on HRT. So
Right.
this
Because it's
whole
money.
notion that it's
It's money.
overmedicated is really fascinating to me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like all over the news and people are just huge
Right.
debates and you're like, nobody's actually 5% of people, I guess, but
Yeah,
it's
and
not like,
getting it is a struggle. So one of the things that I kind of, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this to begin with was because some of the women that I've spoken to were like, I can't get a doctor to prescribe things for me. I'm being given Prozac, which is helpful for some things, but not others. It's not necessarily the answer for people. Or I'm being told that it's all in my head was actually not an unusual experience for women. Um,
yeah.
we know
I,
actually
I,
it is actually all in our heads. It is actually neurological. There's a really brilliant book. I just want to give a shout out to The Menopause Brain by Lisa Mosconi, which is an awesome book, which shows that you actually lose 30% of your brain's energy between
yeah,
premenopause.
so it's real.
It's
But
really,
but it's an interesting thing. You brought this up before, like, you're using yoga. I want to get into some like specific yoga symptom stuff and then to here, but I since you're here, you want to accept what's going on for you, right? Like
mm-hmm,
it's sort of like that's part of the thing, like what can I control, what can I not control?
mm-hmm,
Um, so but you don't want to accept it so much that you don't do the things you can do, right? That would make your improve your life.
right. It's
So,
not a question of rolling over and sucking it up. I think that's kind of,
right.
and I actually did have a doctor say to me, a very nice doctor say to me, is it ruining your life? Which seemed,
Ruining. Like that's a big question. I mean, what constitutes ruining?
yeah, I mean, does it have to be? I mean, at that point, I was like, I don't know if it's ruining. I'm irrational. I've got no idea.
Yeah, he clearly was trained like at some sort
She was
of
a
like
she, and actually training. She was a she, and actually the training is non-existent. I mean, in their defense, I think
of
most
course not.
clients don't have any training in this. So
Right.
yeah.
So my experience has been working with and just because I'm a guy doesn't mean, obviously I work with women. They go through perimenopause and menopause all the time. And my experience has been we're looking at sort of specific symptoms, right? Instead of like, because menopause isn't a problem in
Mhm.
itself, right?
No.
So the way we look at it as yoga therapists are like, okay, well, what kinds of symptoms do we have? And in my experience has generally been hot flashes,
Mhm.
and then you have fatigue, right, is a big one.
Mhm.
Uh, Anxiety, which kind of goes along with that, but sort of this like mental health part, and that's an interesting 30%, right? It's an interesting thing. You think your brain not working 30% as well, and obviously you're going to have to reconfigure mentally a little bit. Are like the sort of biggest ones, I guess. Is that what
Yeah.
is that the same for you?
I think there's a huge spread. I mean, yeah, they're the headline ones, but in all honesty, I think joint pain is a really big one,
Mhm.
actually, in my experience, which I think often people don't connect
Right.
to actually being menopausal.
Well, because you think, do I have arthritis? Do I have
Right. It could be all
immune
kinds.
disease?
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. I'd say anger and rage are one of the things that I've seen a lot of, people
Right.
feeling really misunderstood and not heard and not seen, and that coming out in that kind of a way has been a big one, which has been interesting to work with. And also I would say depression. I've seen a lot of depression and kind of body dysmorphia, um, you know, especially surrounding weight gain. There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about the idea of weight gain at this time life, and doing what you've always done is not necessarily going to lead you, to not have that. It's just a physiological fact. So, the relationship with your body in that kind of a way, I think, is a good one for yoga therapy as well.
So, in terms of what people actually do,
Mhm.
yoga therapy wise? Like, what could you share for people listening so they can just get a kind of flavor
Mhm.
of like what kinds of stuff they would end up doing to help themselves? So, like, say if they
Yeah.
were if they were your client, you know?
Absolutely. I think it would really depend on what you kind of walked in with. From my point of view, I think, if you walk in with lots of anxiety and insomnia, you do a different kind of, yoga is not one thing. So you do a different kind of yoga. And by that, I'm talking about movement, really. Different kinds of movement you would, for if you were feeling really depressed, we would probably address, maybe you do it at a different time of day, different style of movement, um, I work a lot with meditation as well. I think that's really helpful for people at this stage of life. And actually, one of the things that's really been useful, especially in the group, was the chanting, which takes people very much into their bodies and out of their heads. So it can be a really grounding experience. And what was lovely about that in a group setting as well was the fact that you kind of get this sense of community doing that too, which is also
Mhm.
really supportive from a mental health point of view, I think. So, you do depending on what you arrived with, a mixture of moving, breathing, meditation, chanting, but tailored to what you were actually experiencing rather than a one size fits all. Because hot yoga isn't necessarily going to do it for everybody, especially this. Actually, hot yoga is probably a terrible
Probably
example.
not gonna do it for anyone experiencing menopause.
But maybe the yoga I've always been doing suddenly, like I found, suddenly wasn't really working for me anymore, and I had to work quite hard to work out what kinds of practices would work to help me get a grip on. For me
Mhm.
specifically, I started to have really bad panic attacks, which I think are not uncommon for women in perimenopause, and that trying to get a kind of grip on that has been a work in progress. But I had to really tone down, like I'd always done quite kind of fierce yoga, quite strong yoga. I had to really tone that down and
Mhm.
understand that rest and slow gentle movement and being gentle with myself was actually exactly where I needed to be. So that kind of approach.
Yeah. And also learning, I just want anyone listening, it doesn't mean that like you're never going to exercise again, right? Because you
Oh
have
god,
to do
no,
slower yoga.
I also run half marathons, just saying.
Yeah. I just want to point that out because it's more just like,
No, that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But that you do need to be more sensitive to where you are in the moment, right? That
Mhm.
this is one of those, like, symptoms can change not only on a daily basis but on an hourly basis, and so you need to be sensitive. One of the pieces of work that I do with people is sensitizing to, where am I right now? What do I need right now? And knowing that there are options, that you can choose.
Yeah. And I think you pointed out that's so lovely is then we've got this kind of other piece where people are going through transition and because we're working in a kind of holistic nature, you can use that to know yourself better, not just to ease the symptoms, but also to kind of move on into whatever your next phase of life is. Some of
Absolutely.
which is just resistance, right? Like we're all resist. Well, I shouldn't say we all ever, but many of us are resistant to aging, right? Like nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, I hope I get super old soon. Like
Right,
that's not
right.
most of our experience. So that's a thing in itself. But yoga has a lot to say
Mhm.
about, how how to sort of go through life transitions and how to um, get more okay with things in
Right,
general.
and to
So
accept the fact that everything is changing, right?
yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
changing all the time, and that and an ability, I think, to sort of reframe that. And again, I don't mean by reframing, I don't necessarily mean putting a positive spin on it, but I just mean reframing it in terms of where your brain can be at with it. In terms
Mhm.
of your actual um, ability to sit with it. I think
Yeah,
sit with the realities that you're going through.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes you see sort of things where, people are like, it could be for anything, but if it was for this, they'd be like, lucky you, you're going through this change. Everything's awesome. And, if you're doing it right, you'll be like super happy, basically, about all the elements of this. I see these kinds of things, and they always kind of like irk me, because it's not about being super happy or, but getting to a place of acceptance and sort of enjoying your life, whatever that means. But um, yeah, I guess if I had never heard of yoga therapy, I might be a little afraid that somebody's going to kind of come at me with some sort of kind of new agey yoga
Oh yeah,
take
the
on it, right?
toxic positivity. Yeah,
Yes. I like that.
No, I don't. No, I agree. It's not about that at all. No.
Yeah. No.
No, I mean, sometimes it can be accepting that it really is really difficult
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
it is just really difficult. There is no silver lining, right? At that
No.
point, things are really hard.
But you can sleep better,
Mhm.
manage your emotional states
Right,
better,
right. And
function better.
tolerate distress, to a greater degree. I think that's one of the skills
Yeah.
that's really teachable in yoga therapy is learning how to tolerate distress or discomfort. Yeah.
Mhm. So, one thing I just would like you to just mention is, so if I came to you as a client or I was even in your group, like how long did it take people to get benefits? Like what kind of process are we looking at here?
I'd say again, it was like a two-layered thing. Like there was somewhere it was just an immediate, there's somewhere it's an immediate benefit. I think, especially as I said in the group thing. Actually, in the group thing, people got a sense of support and common understanding, which I think was an immediate connection, which was really helpful for women. However, when I work one-on-one with people, one of the most common things that I hear people say to me is that it's really empowering. So I think that can be really fast. I think just taking charge of it, feeling like you've taken charge of, one aspect of this, and you're not being, fobbed off or kind of told it's all kind of, in your head or whatever. You're actually kind of being told that in fact you have the power to help yourself to some degree with it, um, is helpful for some women. And then, I think there are longer term benefits. I mean, there are all kinds of different longer term benefits. So, the whole strengthening and, working positively for heart health and bone health and all of those obviously take a while, but with a regular practice, you're going to feel those benefits, right? Even within a couple of months, it's going to make a difference to your brain and body.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of help available for people that they can do themselves, and this is one way. And I'm hoping people are listening to this and being like, "Oh, I could do something,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not just sort of stuck with what conventional Western medicine has, which is not great right now because again, they're just kind of getting going on research. So, you have standard treatments that doctors will offer you. Like if you have a mental health problem, they'll offer you mental health, drugs or whatever, and that's fine. But there's other things you can do too. Um,
Yes, absolutely. And that, this can be supportive of and used in conjunction with a Western medicine approach too, right?
sure.
The two are not exclusionary either. That even if you've had a fantastic experience and found a brilliant doctor who will prescribe you whatever you need or kind of be totally sympathetic, this would also have its place in
Yeah.
keeping yourself mentally and physically healthy and grounded.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people work with you or anyone through our school, I mean, our school has a kind of integrative, like, not uh, we don't have a problem with Western medicine or
Mhm.
anything that helps anybody. So, if you were thinking about you working with a yoga therapist and they were anyone from our school anyway, you would find that people are very open to, whatever treatments you're already having. Um, hopefully, we're working on some courses here, breathing deeply, and this will be one of them. This is like sort of top of list, again, because there's a lot of women on the planet. And Fiona's really good at it. If someone wanted to work with you privately, how would they find you? Can you just give them your
So
website or?
I have a website which is, my name is complicated, but I'm going to say it slowly. It's Fiona Janiloos yoga.com. And my second name is Jalinoos because that's the difficult bit. And then I'm on Instagram at Fiona Janiloos Yoga Therapy.
And I will say I've worked with Fiona for years now, and I will just give you my endorsement. I'm going to give you not only my endorsement as a yoga therapist, which obviously we're doing this, but Fiona's a lovely person. So if you have any questions about this, I'd encourage you to reach out to her. She's really great. And if you can't remember her difficult last name, if you find us at breathingdeeply.com and send us a message, we will get to her no problem. So that might be easier. Breathingdeeply.com and say, who is that menopause lady? And we will find her for you. But thank you for speaking with us today. And I'm really appreciative of you and your work. So
Thank
thanks so
you.
much.
Yeah.